Major Sam of Major Sam Cosplay, thank you very much for coming on the Paid to Play podcast.
Thank you for having me.
What's putting a smile on your face at the moment? What are you enjoying?
Well, I've got two supernovas coming up. So that's Melbourne Supernova and Gold Coast Supernova, which I'm getting my costumes organized for the moment. But at the moment, I'm just enjoying games of Civilization 5 at the moment, as nerdy as that sounds.
Well, the last Civilization style game I played was Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri, so I don't know if that actually dates me, but I know what you mean. They can be bloody engrossing when you're researching the next tech level or just trying to make sure you're keeping your population nice and happy while you're.
Yes,
Mm.
that's it. Me and my boyfriend consider Civ the time traveling machine because from one minute you think you're playing for half an hour, the next minute it's 8 hours later and you didn't even realize.
Ah, God, if my computer up to it, I might see if I can get my hands on another Civ at some point. Either that or get Alpha Centauri, download it from GOG.com. I love how they keep putting the old stuff out again. It's great.
Yeah.
Mm. Ah, so you mentioned a couple of supernovas, and of course, the reason that I asked you to come on the podcast is because you are a cosplayer. So when did you first discover your love of making and wearing costumes?
Well, probably from about grade 11 in high school, that's when I started to realize, oh, I really like costumes. I really like making things. I love sewing. Why don't I get into theatre and making costumes? So I got involved with school's productions. Wasn't ever good enough at acting to actually be in them, so I thought, oh, may as well make the costumes for the actors. So and that was really quite fun and interesting. And then in 2011, my brother took me to my first supernova in Brisbane, and I had an idea that people dressed up at these conventions, but I didn't realize at what sort of caliber they did. And I went there and I saw these people and I thought, oh, I can do that. That seems really fun. And it thought it was like a really good creative outlet for me to practice making costumes,
Mm.
which could potentially lead me to jobs and more work and kind of keep that, a love of costuming going and doing it personally as well as a hobby.
Mm. So tell me, what was the first costume that you put together?
Well, my first costume for myself I ever put together was probably when I was 17 years old, and it was the Riddler from Batman, of
Ah.
course. Batman lover, he's the best superhero, just putting that out there. And that was for a Halloween party, so I don't consider that cosplay.
Mm.
But my first cosplay costume was for the next Supernova in Brisbane, and that was the Quarter Sun from Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, which was quite a detailed costume. And it was the first time me wearing a costume for more than half an hour, and I couldn't sit down in it. So I learnt a lot from that costume. So sitting down in costume is fantastic if you can do that.
Mm. So it's interesting because you did have a something of a background in costuming, but I guess if it was school plays and the like, especially on the stage, there's usually I have the feeling there's often not much call for people sitting down. So that was just something that you'd not had to take into account before.
Oh,
Mm.
just learning things at that point, and I definitely learnt that one. And so whenever I think of costumes now, I think of movement is super important, and especially when it comes to posing for photos now as well. It's another big thing I have to think about, which posing for photos was never on the initial agenda for making costumes as it is now.
Well, tell me something, Sam. How long have you been a geek for? Because you mentioned that your brother took you to your first supernova a few years ago, and I know that these cons have been going for years. I'm pretty sure Supernova was going before I left Sydney in 2005. So, how come that was the first time that you'd ever actually been to a con? And had you had that in? I mean, you're a Bat fan, so how long had you been reading comic books and playing games and things like that beforehand?
Well, I'm the youngest of three kids.
Uh-huh.
So I've got two older brothers.
Ah, right.
So I was kind of not so much forced, but grew up with, playing with their toys and I used to play with my eldest brother's original 1977 Star Wars Kenner figures,
Haha.
that kind of thing. I had all the Star Wars books. I learned the alphabet from a Star Wars book. Like, grew up with it. That was just normal to me. We had Ghostbusters, Ninja Turtles.
Mm.
It was normal. I didn't realize I was a geek. It was just I thought, oh yeah, this is cool. My brothers are playing with this.
Hmm.
I will too. So yeah, big Star Wars family.
That's fantastic. No, me being an only kid, I pretty much had most of that stuff as well, but uh, sadly, no one in the household quite to share it with.
Oh, that's a shame.
Mm.
But still, you got conventions, you got people like us you can talk to. So
Mm. Oh, absolutely.
big community.
Mm. So tell me, you did theatre in high school. Was that something that you were able to then pick up on after you got out?
Well, getting theatre jobs is actually quite difficult. It's a lot of contract jobs, so you don't know whether you're working from, you know, jobs end really quickly and big gaps in between, and kind of a lot of more older people work in the theatre and costume, so getting in
Mm.
as a young person makes it a little bit more difficult again because most people are looking for experience. So I did study costume for a year, and then I've also studied millinery, which is hat making, for 2 years as well. So still trying to find my feet in trying to get a job in the costume industry, but the benefit of cosplay is that I can keep practicing and I'm building up a portfolio that I can actually show potential job applicants. So, yeah, I did work in the theatre in Toowoomba, which is where I grew up for 2 years, which I was paid, and that's where I learned a lot of my skills in
Mm.
costuming and especially behind the scenes as well. So, yeah, at the moment I'm just kind of doing a casual job just to see where I am at cosplay and see where that takes me.
Mm. And you also mentioned that you've spent 6 years in the bridal industry, which again sounds like it's very much focused on dressmaking. So, how has that been for you so far?
Um, Bridal industry is very, um, it's a very special sort of industry. It's a lot of emotion goes into it.
Yeah, the word drama did come to mind just then.
Yeah. So I originally used to do bridal dresses alterations from my home when I was making my hats and had my own business selling hats. So I did that on the side as well as helping out another designer in Toowoomba making her dresses as well. So I started with the dresses, and then when I moved to Brisbane 2 years ago, I started a job at a suit hire store where I am the head of alterations on both hire suits and retail suits. So I started in the wedding section with the wedding dresses, and now I'm back into the suits, which I do prefer the suits, and that one guys are a little bit more forgiving than the brides. But
Mm.
yeah, so it's been a long time working in bridal for a 24-year-old.
Yeah. So, how many cons have you been to since that first experience at Supernova? And there is a question that I've been dying to ask each cosplayer I get on, and yet somehow I keep forgetting, which is how many characters have you got in your wardrobe at the moment?
Oh, 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 okay. That's a hard one. So I'll start with how many supernovas I've been to.
Mm.
Well, I go to a lot of supernovas because my partner is actually supernova staff, so I kind
Right.
of tag along with him, which is really handy. I did used to volunteer for Supernova as well, but now that I'm sort of a little bit more serious into cosplay, I can't do both. So I ended up just having to not volunteer anymore and just tag along with my boyfriend. So so I'd attend about So I do every supernova but Perth. So that's Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. So I do 4 supernovas a year.
Wow.
And then I'll normally do an alt expo here in Brisbane. So I do about 5 to 6 conventions in Australia a year.
Now that is a pretty darn serious schedule. How many how many cosplayers do you encounter who who you keep seeing over and over again at these cons? You're sort of doing the same circuit. Is there a regular crowd that you find keeps showing up to the same conventions you do?
There is definitely the regulars. Actually, I forgot. No, hang on. Sorry. Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide. No, that's 5 supernovas I do a year. 5. That's right. I forgot that we've got Brisbane and Gold Coast. So
Yeah.
that's 5. So the Brisbane Gold Coast people, they will go to both.
Yeah.
It's only an hour away, so I see a lot of people doing those two. A lot of people do go to Sydney, especially Queenslanders. It's quite cheap to go to Sydney from Queensland, so Sydney's quite a big one, and there's a big group there. But for the Melbourne ones and Adelaide, I don't quite see as many. But I don't think there's many people that do 5 out of 6 that I do. Not no one that I can think off the top of my head,
Hmm.
but most of them do at least 3 of them, which I think is quite good. And some of these are back to back as well. So like the 2 coming up, I've got Melbourne the next weekend, and then I got Gold Coast the weekend after that. So it's quite tight schedule.
Mm.
So you have 2 at once, and then a big gap, and then 2 at once, and then a big gap. So yeah,
Mm.
full
And
on.
and most of these conventions actually span at least a weekend, so you've got a day, a night, and a day. Is that right?
It's like for the big ones like Brisbane and Sydney, it's technically 3 days. So the Friday goes from 1 o'clock in the afternoon to about 8 or so,
Mm.
and then you got the full weekend. The smaller ones like Melbourne and Adelaide have an evening preview evening for the Friday. So some are a 3 dayer, some are a 2 and a bit dayer
Mm.
sort of one. But for the big ones, with the 3 days, a lot of people have 3 completely new different costumes for those, which is incredible that they can even do that one. I even struggle to do that, so it's quite a feat to be able to do 3 new costumes for each convention.
Mm. So, how do you tend to do? How many costumes, new or otherwise, do you try and get to, bring with you to each con that you go to? And how much time do you spend in costume? Is there any time that you actually just get out of costume and tour the floor in civvies, as it were?
Oh no, no, I'm a veteran. I don't do that. I'm in costume all day.
Right.
So normally um go to Supernova early because, like I said, boyfriend stuff. So I have to be
Haha.
there 2 hours early. So I get ready at Nova. So I'll be in costume from 10 in the morning till 6, 7 at night. So it's a long time, but you get used to it, and you prepare yourself for it. So especially with costumes where you maybe can't go to the bathroom, which does happen more than you think.
Ooh,
So you
okay.
gotta kind of gotta prepare yourself for that. So give yourself maybe half an hour when you can jump out of your costume real quick, have something to eat, go to the bathroom, get back
Mm.
into it.
Is that mostly the ones where there is a significant amount of spandex involved that tend to cause those sort of problems, or
No, they're the easy ones. I
ah,
could wear spandex, that's fine. It's more the ones like one of my recent costumes, Miss Kitty. It's a full sort of corseted bodysuit with a fake tail and all these feathers. I can't get it into it by myself, so to go to the bathroom, I'll have to take my boyfriend with me.
all right.
Do me back up, that kind of thing. But and then your other ones, like I've worn armor before, and that can be quite painful, a bit hard to go to the bathroom. You have to de-armor, then go to the bathroom, come back, put all your armor back on again. So when I normally travel, I try to pick a costume that I can go to the bathroom in without any help.
Mm. So it sounds like when you're making a costume, and these are probably skills that you'd already picked up and honed through your theatre work. There are a variety of skills and a variety of materials
Mm.
involved, especially if you're making armor. So, what are some of the challenges that you've encountered when making costume? And do you, although I think I've asked this question of a few cosplayers before, do you use real metal, or what do you use if you're making an armor costume instead?
Well, normally, with a lot of convention rules, which you also have to consider when making a costume, is that there's no
Ah,
metal. So when it comes to your weapons, yep, no metal whatsoever. It's just a safety thing, and
of
also
course.
metal's extremely hard to work with, and it takes a
Mm.
lot of skill. So what where us cosplayers are really good at is faking. We fake everything, faking everything from our armor to our cleavage. So we're just really good at faking everything. So we use things like thermoplastic, like Warbler is very popular at the moment, which is a plastic which you can heat up with a heat gun and mold it into your shape, and then you can paint it to look like armor. So it's very safe, easy, sort of really fun way to make really quick armor. So, and that's one of the skills that I've learned recently, is making more armor. I never really did that in the theater. In the theater, it was a lot of sewing based. So, but it's really good to be able to do more than just sewing or more than just armor, because you will always run into both for your costume.
Mm.
So I'm always learning a new skill for each new costume, and there's never been a costume where I've put together and thought, oh yeah, that was easy, I can do that again. It's always been a challenge.
Mm. Now, I have to then just go back to a couple of questions I was asking earlier. With the costumes at cons, do you try and bring a new one every day? Oh, not
I
a new one, but at least a different one every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I could do a whole weekend in one costume. I unfortunately I get really bored with costumes really, really quickly.
Mm.
Because I'm a creator and like to make things with my hands. As much as I love wearing them, it's not my primary reason why I make costumes. I just really like making them. As soon as I get them on and get the photos that I like and I'm happy with, I feel like that costume's done and I don't really need
Ah.
to do that one again. So,
Mm.
unlike there's plenty of people out there that have a costume that they love and they'll just put it on and they're like, yeah, happy with it. But the more creative people that like to have a new costume. But that's just me. You know, people cosplay for different reasons, but
Mm.
that's the way I operate.
So, on the play side of cosplay, do you enjoy that aspect of being someone else for a little bit? Even though you said you're not really you didn't quite have the acting skills, is that something that perhaps cosplay scratches an itch with a little bit?
It does a little bit. I do. mm, You know, it's always that whole always a bridesmaid, never a bride kind of thing. You know, I say that and I'm working in the bridal industry. It's terrible. How you know, when I was in theater, I'd make all these amazing costumes, people, and then I'd see them on stage, and I'd think to myself, oh, I'd love to be up there. Like, what's that feeling like? And having a cosplay competition like at Supernova, I've actually had a chance to be that person on stage in a costume and perform where I've had no acting lessons. I haven't had dancing lessons. I don't know how to do any of that, but cosplay has given me the opportunity to have a taste of that and actually see what it's like. And I actually really like it. And I'd love to go on stage more often. And one of the things that cosplay has done for me is actually given me the confidence to do that, which I never thought I would do. You know, I never thought I'd go on stage and do a routine like I did in Adelaide 2 years ago. I cosplayed Jessica Rabbit. I went on stage and did a little skit, my first ever skit, and I actually won that competition. So that was quite incredible.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you.
I then have to ask, how many trophies have you come home with from cosplay
I've
competitions?
only got two at the moment, but I do want to do it a little bit more often. It takes a lot to be able to put your costume together and then have time to maybe practice the skit to a point that you're comfortable with. And most of the time, I haven't done it because I've just run out of time. But I'm trying to, you know, figure out something for these other costumes. I'm hoping to do one in 3 weeks' time, but we'll see how we go with that.
Now, do you have any particular favourite costumes that you've put together and portrayed?
Probably my favorite costume and the one that I'm most happy with is the latest one I did, which was the Miss Kitty, which was she's a character from Disney's Basil the Great Mouse Detective, and it's a very obscure costume. She's a showgirl mouse. So she's in this blue outfit. She has big feathers and a tail and ears, that kind of thing, big bow on her head, and she sings a little song. And I spent hours putting sequins on it and hand stitching every single feather onto the back of it. So, and the photos that I got back were incredible, and I was just so happy with myself in that costume. So that would be my favorite costume, absolutely. And that's the one I'm hoping maybe I'll do a skit with at Gold Coast Supernova.
Ah, well, fingers crossed. Now, one thing you did mention in the pre-show briefing that you sent me is that you would, aside from the fact that in a way you have been paid to play by making costumes for theatre and indulging your love of sewing, etc., through working in the bridal industry, you would still like very much to cosplay as your job.
Yeah.
How have you approached that so far?
Oh, not as well as I would like. I have a plan. We all have a plan, don't we?
Of course.
And but unfortunately, there's a thing called real life in the way at the moment, which is, full-time work. I work 5 days a week, and trying to do cosplay as a career on top of that is really quite difficult. But I'm trying to work on it, and I've had a lot of opportunities pop up that, maybe I can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel where I can slowly switch from working 5 days a week to maybe, 3 days a week and doing the rest of my time doing cosplay. And hopefully that will turn into full-time cosplay. But it's a big jump, considering there's only a few people in the world that actually cosplay as a job. So, but there's no harm in trying. And the things I've tried to do with that is, approach companies, that kind of thing, and try and get sponsorships. I had my print store going there for a while, but I actually had to close that due to not being able to have time to fill in orders for that one. But I am looking to reopen it as soon as I get the time and more prints to put up there. So and I've had a couple of opportunities modeling and trying to get my face out there. So yeah, I'm working on it.
So from the sounds of it, just to go over those, there has been general modelling. What does that involve? Just who have you modelled for, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. Well, I recently modelled for Living Dead Clothing, which is a Brisbane-based company. They make spandex lycra, like skater dresses, tights. The things that are very, very in fashion at the moment. And a lot of these companies approach cosplayers because we're their target market. So rather than getting in just standard models, they're getting people that are actually part of the community. So they're actually directly advertising to the people that actually buy their product. And they approached me through a friend, said, oh, they're looking for some models. Did you want to do that? I said, of course I did. And it was amazing. It's like, and like I said, with the whole acting thing, it's like I've never been trained to act. I've never been trained to model. So I turned up and I had my makeup on and everything, and I just had no idea what I was doing, but I did it apparently, and I did it okay. So hopefully they'll invite me back. So that's what I'm waiting for. But it was a really good opportunity and an experience I never thought I would have.
Now, I sort of became aware of cosplay as a way of getting paid to play when I was sort of following an online game called Firefall for a little while, and one of the things that they actually did as a promotion was to engage a cosplayer to go to cons on their behalf in the kit of one of the main characters in the fiction of the game. So,
Mm,
is how have you've mentioned looking at getting sponsors for cosplay
mm.
yourself? How has that gone for you? And have you approached game companies yourself, or
Um, well, probably the biggest story I can tell you with that one is that it's a game that I absolutely adore, and I played the first one, I played the second one, and it's a game called Orcs Must Die,
aha?
and it was made by an independent company, and I played the absolute hell out of both games. I love them. I think they're amazing, and I loved one of the characters in it. So I decided I'm going to cosplay that because she's so cool. So this one day I did a makeup test for her, and it turned out really well. And I started making the costume, post some progress pics on my page, and then all of a sudden I got a message from one of the social media um, people from the actual company that made this game, and he asked me, "Are you actually making the full costume?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "That's amazing. We'd love to see it." And they even said, if you lived in America, we would invite you to all our, conventions, that kind of thing. And I thought, damn it, Australia, you're too far away. So, and they ended up giving me free codes to the new game coming out, so I tested their new game coming out, and that was really cool. But even though I didn't get to go to America or anything, it was just amazing that to you know show the people that designed this character the love that I gave for it by making the costume. And yeah, that was really, really cool.
Hmm. Um, Now, tell me a little bit more about print sales. Since I've started looking into cosplay, I've sort of understood
Mm-hmm.
that that is one main way that cosplayers can
Mm.
uh, make a little bit of money from their hobby and hopefully offset some of the costs. But what is actually involved in running a print store, and what were the factors that did for a little while put you made you have to put it aside for a bit?
Um, it takes a lot of effort. Like when I first started, I thought, oh yeah, that's easy. They do all these cosplayers do it. Surely it's not that hard. And when I realized the work that went into it, I was like, oh okay, so it takes that much. So the process of choosing your pictures, getting permission from the photographer,
Mm.
figuring out how much money to give the photographer because it is his image or her image as well as it's mine as well. So you've got to organize that between the two of you and have like a contract for safety. It's the case of printing them, finding a place to print them. As soon as you print them, you get them in and personally sign all of them, which I I love doing because it's just like, why is somebody buying my signature? Why would anyone do that? You're all strange. So I was going through all of them and signing them personally. I like to put people's names on them because, I like to show their love for their support for me.
Mm.
So going through all of them and putting all the addresses on, and it takes a lot of time, and it's just time I didn't have, and I didn't want people to wait on their prints, and I wanted to make sure it was actually working properly. So I think once can get more income from it, so if I get more of a following and then I can do more prints, I might be able to drop a day at work somehow and have a day for doing print sales and all the media side of my cosplay stuff, and then so I still have a day to actually work on costumes and that kind of thing. So but at the moment work is just it's killing me, so unfortunately I do have to put it to the side, but I am want to reopen it for people.
So this is the bridal work that I should
Mm.
be talking about. Has it had an upswing recently? Is it just all of a sudden you're working longer than you're expecting to? It's just yeah, it's picked up, or
It has its seasons.
mm.
With the bridals, you get people that will get married. April's big because we've got the big holiday coming up, so a lot of people
Mm.
getting married then because they can stay drunk for longer. You've got end of year bridal stuff, so November's quite big, as well as February is a little bit big as well. And then you got the June winter sort of weddings in there. But originally I was working a little bit more casual, but as now I'm a bit more involved in the job, and now that I'm head of alterations, and I pretty much run the show at the moment, and
Mhm.
just because we've got so much suits going out, and by the time I get home, and normally I'd work on a costume, but it's just so exhausting. So yeah, like I said, real life's in the way at the moment, but
Yeah.
hopefully it'll quiet down soon.
Do you ever get those moments where, I mean, from the sounds of it, you're head of alterations now, so I assume that means there's a little bit more administrative and people managing work
Yes.
and a little bit less of actual direct work on clothing. Um, is that, I mean, sorry, is that the case?
No.
Ah,
Cause I can do all the more technical stuff on the suits. There is actually more for me to do.
oh,
As well as there's been a pickup in people actually buying their suits, which, a higher suit can take about 20 minutes to organize. A retail suit can take up to 3 hours to organize. And
right.
we're starting to have wedding parties that are buying everything, which,
Mm.
because of the economy last year, they didn't do that. But now that the economy's picked up in the bridal, it's people are starting to buy again. So it's just another sort of 10 times more work for us to do. It's more money for us,
Mm,
but and
mm,
more work as well. So
yeah.
yeah.
So, how often, if ever, do you get those moments when you've basically got home from work having uh, done all these technical alterations and you've got in the door and you've looked at your cosplay kit and just gone, I am sick of doing this at work. I don't want to face it again when I'm at home. Do you find that happens at all?
Yes, of
Yeah.
course, absolutely. And the worst part about it does get a little bit depressing. It's kind of like, oh, I'd love to do my craft, but I'm just so exhausted, and you're mentally and physically exhausted. And sometimes I just want to go home and eat,
Mm,
just eat and play Civ. That's
mm.
all I want to do. I don't want to think about, oh, how am I going to do this costume piece? Oh, does that look good enough? And no, I just want to play Civ and eat
Yeah.
and go to bed.
Mm.
So my day offs are extremely precious to me at the moment because it's the only time that I can actually work on my costumes and
Yeah.
try and get done in time for cons.
Mm. One of the things I do hear over and over again about the cosplay community is
Mhm.
what a fantastic community it can be. The words "pay it forward" kind of keep coming up over and over again. How have you found the community? You know, the your fellow cosplayers and the broader community since you got in the hobby.
It's a very special community because it's kind of a living community where it's not always positive, it's not always negative, it kind of just flows. And the amazing thing that I found about the cosplay community is that everybody knows everybody somehow. Everyone's connected in this great circle of cosplay life. And people from Perth know people from Melbourne, and those Melbourne people know the Sydney people, and the Sydney people know the Adelaide people. And you'll go to a convention and hang out with a friend, and then their friend will introduce you to another friend, and then suddenly you're friends with them, and then you just see everybody at cons. And it's got to the point now that when I do go to a convention, I'm never alone for more than probably half an hour until I run into somebody I know and have a chat to them for ages. And
Mm,
I think that's really wonderful about a community. I've never been in a community that was so spread and just everybody knows everybody.
mm,
And most of the time I do forget people's names. I am guilty of that, and I forget people's costumes because, and that was the other thing when you meet people at conventions, you're meeting them in a disguise.
yeah.
So you go to another convention and you reintroduce yourself, and then you realize when you walk away that, oh, that was that person, and I just reintroduced myself, and I've just made a terrible idiot of myself. I have done that to one person 3 times, and I absolutely apologize about that one, but I think
Mm.
everybody has done it at least some point.
And surely you must get the when you realise your mistake and you apologise, that there must be the times where they go, um, instead of going, yeah, I was just waiting for you to figure it out. They look at you for a second and then just go, oh crap, that was you from then, and then, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
recognize you either, you know.
yeah. But it's really good when you do that because you have this connection of, oh, I've made an idiot out of myself. We're best friends now. So
Yeah.
it's fine. If you do that, it's fine. I think everybody understands. We're all in disguise.
Mm.
We're all in disguise. What do you expect? And I can't always remember when people do their progress pictures on the internet and stuff. It's like, yeah, everyone's doing it. I can't keep up. So normally on my Facebook a day before a con, I'll put up the status. Sorry if I don't know who you are. Just come and tell me your name and I'll have a chat to you because I'm just so useless at remembering people.
Yeah. So, what is next for Major Sam cosplay? What have you you mentioned your con schedule coming up, but
Hmm.
what else have you got coming up in the future that you're looking forward to?
Okay, future. It's always hard to say.
Mm.
But over the past however many years I've been doing this for, only 4 years, which isn't too long. I'm sort of starting to figure out what makes me happy when
Mm.
I make my costumes, and I've realized that I don't like making props. I don't like making armor. I know it's the fashion at the moment, but have no joy in it. So
Mm.
I'm going
Mm.
to really focus on sewing based costumes. So, because that's where my skills are, and that's where I feel strong and confident. I love wearing, just dresses and just extravagant pieces, and I'll just leave the armor up to the people that are really good at it. So that's sort of I'm going to be doing a lot of sewing costumes. I'm really looking forward to actually doing a Marilyn Monroe costume because I just look at her gowns and I think, oh, just I'd love to wear one of those. So I'm going to be a lot of glamorous, um, old Hollywood costumes that I'd love to do. So I've got uh, Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. Willie's costume at the start with all the sequins and
Oh yes,
Chinatown. I
yes.
really want to do that costume, so that's a lot of hand sewing sequins there. But I love that dress. I'm going to focus on that one eventually. And I think I just want to keep sort of plodding along, trying to get some jobs out of it and trying to get rid of that damn suit hire and start up my um, prints again, trying to get some money and just keep loving all the people that support me. And yeah, that's, little baby steps at a time. So,
Yeah.
and I'm probably looking to go to America next year to go to San Diego Comic Con. So I'm hoping to show off there a little bit and see what happens. But yeah, but that's next year, so we'll focus on
Yeah.
this year first.
San Diego Comic Con does seem to be almost the mecca of pop culture, and I guess in particular
Mm.
cosplay at the moment. Can you what attracts you to going there?
Probably the hugeness
Mm.
and a lot of the guests there as well. That's another thing to a convention is guests and shopping and just to go to one of the biggest conventions in the world would just be mind blowing and seeing all the costumes there and me feeling like a very small Australian in a very big sea of Americans. That sounds really exciting and maybe getting a chance to meet some other cosplayers there, like very famous cosplayers. That would be amazing. But I I also would like to go to other large conventions in America like Dragon Con and BlizzCon.
Mm.
They're starting to get really big as well. So, but going to San Diego first and see what happens from there.
Now, looking back, if there were three things that you wish someone had maybe told you when you were getting started out, whether in cosplay or just costuming in general, that you think might help someone who was sort of looking at the hobby themselves, what would
Mhm.
those three things be?
So three bits of advice I would give to someone
Mm.
starting out. Um, okay, be prepared. Number one, be prepared for frustration and failure
Mm.
because that will happen. And that happens to the best of us. But as soon as you can get that out of your system and realize that, things don't always go as planned, better it is. Don't expect it to all be glamorous and awesome and fun all the time. But the thing is, you've got to go through those failures and frustrations to be able to create amazing costumes and go to conventions. So don't panic about that. What other advice can I give? Number two, if you don't have everything in the world, doesn't mean you can't make good costumes. I work in a very shoebox apartment with not a whole lot of money and not a whole lot of access to supplies, but I seem to still get by and make some decent costumes. So don't let the little tiny fish bowl stop you from being a really, really big fish. That kind of thing. What else could I say? Have fun. If you're not having fun, you need to reassess what you're doing, because really in the end, if you're not having fun and cosplay becomes a job for you where you dread working on something, just stop, because people will see it and you will feel it and you won't feel very good about it. So always have fun. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sam. And if, after hearing this podcast, our listeners are keen to track you down online and get involved with your social media presences, where can they find you?
Well, mostly I do all my Facebook stuff. Just search Major Sam Cosplay. It's pretty easy to find. I'm on Twitter as well as the Major Sam. I also have an Instagram, which is Miss Major Sam, but you can find most of all those through my Facebook page. So, yeah, which is Major Sam Cosplay.
Well, Major Sam, thank you very much for a fantastic chat for the Pay to Play podcast. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was good fun.